Good evening. Have some happy poems, some sad poems, angry poems. The angry poems get a little vulgar. Just let me know. Keep the shaking by having the folder here. How's everybody doing?
Good.
I'm doing good too. The first poem I'm going to read is for somebody that is really, really strong. And I really look up to them. They have a lot of flying they want to do. So this poem is called The Origin of Out. It's for Hayblaine. We all want it to come, to bring it from the recesses of our guts, coil it inside and shape it like dough. So when it manages to rip from our throats, we can stand behind it and say we were prepared, and say we were proud, and say it was how we'd always wanted it to go. It belongs to us after all, the coming out. The belief that what we say will alter perception, require condemnation, and ultimately receive appreciation for our gall and our brave souls. But the malleable dough can get misshapen. Words can fall off or meld into others. Perception can be lopsided, and we are back with this lump of dough we need to consume to survive. We all want it to get us, to realize that light outside can bathe us and take us to the other side of the world, where the sky is still blue and the grass is still green, but we have individuals over 1,000 miles away. We are out in our outworld of outside, making new dreams and landscapes, of mouths, of words inside monuments, of tomes and tomes of our own pain, broke open so others can trespass and know that they are not alone. But we are grateful to being out in our outworld of outside, because the alternative to this origin of out would be out of time. This one's called The Myth of Baltimore. Cobbled streets, skinny and without any shoulders. How do they teach driver's ed here? No swinging sense of history, regardless of the highway signs pointing the way for me. No passing pedestrians enjoying the day. No dogs being walked or strollers parked. No one is sitting on the dock of the bay. This is what I always do. Pull my expectations through my skull, out the crown of my head, only to see them splatter on the ground, among the hipster-crowded pavement, and the children wearing AC/DC shirts who have no clue why that's ironic, at a concert for musicians whose music won't blow out my ears, no matter how close to the speakers I stand. Where headliners haven't had a hit in years, and lowliners are still singing encores. I am staring my dead past in the face, and hoping I can keep it together, when a girl slaps another for stealing her place at the porta potty, and I might be pissing my pants. When I was writing this other poem, this next poem, I suppose, I was thinking about my grandfather. He passed away several years ago of emphysema. And I used to work at this place called the Remote Coding Center. I don't know if you've heard of it. There's a lot of typing going on there. Basically, it's data entry for the postal service. You type pieces of mail over and over and over again until your shift is over. And then you go home, come back, and do it again the next day. So while I was thinking about that, while I was working, I was thinking about how my grandfather was in the morning when he was uh, there every time I went to go see my grandparents. He was sitting in the kitchen, his little breakfast nook that he had, eating every day. Different kinds of things. And so, and when he passed on, I wasn't really there for it. And so this is how I like to remember him. It's called Woodland Hills, California, 91367-4283. Instead of typing Woodland Hills, California, 91367-4283, I try to remember the smell of bacon in my grandmother's kitchen. My eyes affixed on the dust bunnies, highlighted by the morning sun. My grandfather sat bare-chested, the ugly side of age in the form of tiny brown lumps. I shriveled at the lumps and yet was transfixed. I didn't know they were age spots. I'm much more productive when my death is tiptoeing on my mind. It smells like the changing area of the roller dome in here, like sweaty skates. Woodland Hills, California, 91367-4283. Grandpa eats bananas at the kitchen table, meshing with his saliva as he told me how he lost his keys in the snow. His corpse still munches at the kitchen table, with feathery light slipping around his torso, puckered, bloated. 69 years of cream pie, cold fajitas, corn cakes, russet potatoes, green beans, green chili, and the lack of thinking twice or two over the ends of cigarettes, the sweetness of a pipe. I want to watch the unraveled ends of crisp front pocket shirts and the fisherman's hat on his sun-scraped head, and keep out of the hospital beds without the ache of flatulence, the watery whites of lucid eyes, the lack of inhaled breath. Instead, I have this repeated tap, tap, tap in my stead. Woodland Hills, California, 91367-4283. Woodland Hills, California, 91367-4283. I like to travel a lot, so a lot of these poems are about the places where I've been. Baltimore was one of them. It was a disappointment. Sorry if you like Baltimore. The streets are so small. This one's about going to San Francisco. It's called A Slave to the Round Peg. I'm getting used to life without dreams, without pain, and without circumstances for finding the status less than quo. Because I'm told I finally have it all, and I'm envied and praised and objectified, fulfilling and physically emulating the happy ending you hope to have. I'm looking wide at your life choices and finding fault with the step in your hitch, the long in your giddy up, the lack that you link with me, and whatever lackey role you can fulfill in my villainous existence. That's just success, and you long to like the things I love, in hopes that you will attain some echo of glory in a lackluster wet dream of mine. But the silliest joke is on you, from one too fickle to find forever, in a dream that lasts so little, and I'm square at back, and longing to make this my round peg, my one true last love, the sweetheart that sings to me, the butterflies that lead me to a long and sunny avenue, where movies are never more than normal, and knives can be found on the street instead of a cafe. But what does it mean when I walk the streets of wonder, wander bus to bus and train to train, in a place that can only be called your town, your life, your dreams? And now I am a sad echo, a ghost that once was melded with a used dream, a slave to the round peg, and fed me with knowledge that I'm never going to take, the pain that stains with status quo and whittles away the round peg so I can stay, and carve out an existence and find that dream again, only to discover that I hate square pegs, and I'm doomed to love and die with dashed dreams. Some years ago, during one of the many times I took poetry with George, I had a colleague of mine who told me that I wrote boo-hoo poetry. Boo-hoo poetry. Yeah, you know, everything's sad and lonely on your end, and that's all it is. Huh. And what I realized was that he never wrote boo-hoo poetry because he didn't feel anything. When I consider boo-hoo poetry is just poems helping me get through what I'm feeling. Imagine that. So I figure when I write poetry, I start with how I feel, and then I move on and try to make it more communicative to everybody else so that people can relate to how I was feeling. So I wrote him a boohoo poem. It's called Lo siento mucho. You are not even Spanish. The hairs on the back of your neck should sway when I tell you why you are troubled. I'm parked here on the same street corner where I saw you last Sunday. The playground with the gravestone swings nearby. I hurt you the way children scrape their knees in this fall down time of year, but I'm not prepared to say why. The problem with your trouble lies in the song you sing off key. The lyrics of the song are for me, but you tell me it's not about saving me. It's funny. You keep saying those words like I'm supposed to believe you're sorry. You are the Santa Claus of I'm sorry. Lo siento mucho. Your ears aren't on straight. Each hole in your head shouts with blatant precision. You are drowning, and you're sorry? If you could only screw your mouth on tighter and tell me what sorry does and sorry feels, how it reads like longing, pulled from creeping piles of body ash. It is fortunate that you are aware you're sinking into that hole you call a home that smells like the dirt at your feet. Realizing your sin is right next to your hatred of me. The shining pawn leading a death massage into your hands. I can't cry, but you can't tell me you're sorry. You are at peace in your sleep circle. You are tired of wanting and are hungry for a convenience store living. You are a flattened spider, afraid once more of walking, laying your dainty limbs close to the smell of a metallic heater, hoping to succumb to numbness as the scorch crawls up your forearm. This one is called Spot. Spot that spot of blood on your neckline. Fingers lingers likely in my brain. I have 2 fingers pressed into my back, flapping my lips together to piece my ideas carefully. Face down like you appear, I slowly bend at the hip to inspect your body. Wounds me to see you so silent, your spine straight, your thighs aligned, and worthy still of my embrace. When I think that I touched the back, hairy spot below your hair before it bled, I crumble low onto my ankles, spread my legs to leave a spot of blood myself, to the memory of your painful slap. That one was not for him. This next poem is one of my favorites, also written when I took 403 with George. It's called Black-Haired Woman at the Marketplace. I'm walking directly adjacent to a man of 55. His hair is chalk, and he shuffles his brown loafers like sand in a bathtub. I ask him if he's having a good day, and his answer smells like gravel. It pokes my shins and weaves through my ears like too much yarn skein. I'm reaching out to take his arm and help him to the marketplace, making change and carrying the red potatoes. I watch as women reach for apples and children beg for caramel. The adobe clay on the countertop wraps me in Navajo custom. I think of Santa Fe with the blue sun and walk particularly toward the women. I feel the potatoes shift above my elbows. He tells me without looking that I'm wearing a red skirt, and it looks older than him. I tell him, Dad, you're blind. He shuffles ahead of me, patting the air like an unfaithful dog, and mumbling groceries under his breath. I'm wondering where crying goes when it's covered in dust. Turning to creep in on a smaller woman's conversation, I drop my potatoes and announce for him to stop walking. He is shorter than me because he stands in a hole, and I note this for a list I create in my slumber. The woman has stopped to help me. I am seeping into the timber of her foreign tongue as each dusty potato is cradled in my sack. Each trickle of her long black hair attracts me, and she smells like butter. My father grabs the sack and explodes in fortissimo curses. I think I don't see him anymore in front of me. I think he's melted beneath the cobblestone pathway. I thank the woman and wonder why Mother is not dead. Last year, I went to Poland. I'm going again this year. Next week, actually. This is called Truth Time in Krakow. Did you know you can find a dance club in Poland that plays techno remix of Richie Valens? I'm sure he never intended a drop beat or expected bobbing Polish ravers waiting to belt out the chorus to La Bamba, one that they've memorized but never spoken aloud. I'm still extremely jealous that we have other places to be, other, more famous places that built this trip into its justification. It titillated the pros and helped con all those on the "why Poland" side. Really, Poland is nowhere close to Myanmar, Dad, I swear. Today we saw the Holocaust exhibit. The day after the worst of the weather, the day after I realized I'd forgotten a good pair of gloves. So we walked the entire first floor, wearing pink hands and closing our mouths to keep the chatter from disturbing others. You and I were in between two separate tours, one led by a loud Scandinavian woman with bright eyes and an ability to yammer over anything in her path. And the other was a young co-ed, probably in her first year of work, her sentences clogged with pulling me from memoriam and slapping me back into my own world. I am steeped in fascination that high schoolers, no matter where they live, can still disrespect their history. Being a European teenager did not bestow more grace upon you. They were all brought to painful silence, as was I, when they saw the words, the ping, 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 as each one revealed its massacre of thought and feeling in its time. The regret that gave into relief, and relief back to regret. The flip from graceless to grateful could still gouge me tonight, and I am wrapping myself up in the bedding that's not mine, kissing every child goodnight, and begging you to take me home instead of seeing the bones of the camp in all its deceased flesh. You were still and serene, wrapping your fingers around your neck when you saw what I saw, when you read what I read. But you never cracked a smile or frown, or rolled an eye or shushed a finger. But you did explain to me that the I had heard was a woman wearing the weight of the worst on her shoulders. And when I walked out, I remember all the pots and cups and pans on the wall and what they meant, because we stayed in the enamel factory the longest to be free of both the graceless and the weight of the worst, once and for all. When I was in Krakow, I was supposed to go visit the concentration camp sites, but there was a exhibit that my friend wanted to go see, and she lives in Poland, so she's never actually seen it. And it was a reconstruction of the entire war. It was like a 3-level exhibit in the middle of Krakow, actually in Oskar Schindler's factory. And what I'm talking about, where everybody was quiet, I mean, the first floor was the war, and so you had all of the preliminary stuff going on. The second floor was the actual tour of the ghettos and everything, so everything was actually quite well surrounded. You felt like you were there. And the third floor was the memorial. And the third floor had this room. It was a big circle with a bunch of columns in it, and it had a lot of writing on the walls in several different languages. And on the walls were stories of people who had had someone help them during the Holocaust. in all these different languages. I think one of the ones I remembered the most was they had said that they were being chased by Nazis, and some person had helped them and taken them and hidden them while they were being chased and given them tea and bread. And so it was talking about all these good deeds that had happened during the war by people that they weren't expecting. But then in the middle of the circle, or the big, huge circle room, there were these spinning pillars. And these were all about regret. Every story on the pillars that were turning were sad stories, things that people wished that they hadn't done. And one of the ones that really took me, which is what I kept thinking about when I wrote that part of the poem, was how some people knew that they were only going to get so much food when they were hiding. And instead of sharing it, they actually kept it for themselves. They wouldn't ration it out to people that they knew they were hiding. They were regretting that they had eaten the food themselves because they were so hungry that they had forgotten that there were other people there too. And so I didn't really give a great picture of what I saw, but I mean, it was really very moving to see everybody go stone silent when we were in that room. And so that's what that poem was about. How about a happy one now? This one's called I'm Good, I'm Sorry, but Bad at Okay. Unapologetic is not becoming. It often smells like, that's okay, but tastes a little like, you're wrong. But still it sits, undisturbed, on my shoulders, like a mantle of, I'm not going to eat that, and you could do better. Like a dangling participle on its way to English class, I want to scrub all your faces and fill my bag with your homework. I'll pick up split infinitive and text speak, and we'll be happy to leave where we're going. OMG, TTYL, BBRB. So I'm good, I'm sorry, because I've learned an apology can absolve like a Hail Mary, when used correctly. Only half of the beats to go tonight. Or distract long enough to create a good excuse. Oh, fuck it, I'm bad at it, and now you know the situation I'm having. How am I doing on time, George?
You have 7 more minutes, if you like.
Okay. We'll skip this one. Another happy poem. This one's called Golden Star. This is about a stress ball that I have at work at my desk. It's in the shape of a star. Golden Star, on my desktop, proper in a pile of dust, shifting from spot to spot to spot, chilly and cool when my hands are warm, room temperature when I'm cold. Soft to the touch and bright as the sun, but shimmering in a way like the ripples of the pool in daytime. And if I were to squeeze it every day, the gold would eventually wear onto my fingertips, and I wouldn't want it anymore. And some would say that's what smothering can do. And some would say that's very unfortunate for the star, because a stress ball is meant for squeezing and suffocation, but a stress star is meant only for admiration. Preservation, comfort full of bright sensation, a dip and dive that is neither falling or shooting or twinkling or wishing. And that is where the tempo should change, because the more I wear off the golden shine, the more it wears on to me. And I want it even so, because it finally looks like I am useful and able to control my stress, because the star exists, and so does she. This is my last poem. It's also about flying. It's called The Return of the Birds. It is difficult to ignore the flight patterns of the birds, heralding the change from season to season, warm to wet to cold to crisp, and steadfast in its recurrence. In preparation for winter, one gathers every drop of heat, opening patches of skin to insert it, flap it around until it surrounds and offers a cocoon of warmth. The night always walks too long, its fingers chapped and aching for moisture the way one wishes it was summer, drinking glasses of water straight from the tap. The The morning would sleep in, but not me. Each zombie step to the shower would have me awake, arguing with me asleep. Those moments are not thought when I see the birds migrating to a warmer shitpost. All I can think about is how different my life would be if I could fly to a warmer shitpost, trade my cold bathroom floor for water that is wetter and bluer than my summer day tap, and wonder if I squeeze my shoulders together if I could get wings to sprout, even if I haven't tried since I was 10. I think about what it means for the birds to return in the spring, how warm the weather feels, often mixed with that spitty kind of rain that you hated in November, but feels refreshing in April. You can always brush your hair later, you know, and recall when it could have been snow. You can ignore the dreary in the morning because it always gives way to sun in the slot between lunchtime and quitting time. Your office window isn't lying like it was in February. It's easier to squeeze your shoulders together when there is sun on your back instead of in your eyes. If the skin would pucker and blister for an hour with the promise of sinewy feathers, and if I fit myself with a portable tank of oxygen and allowed some chemical drug to infuse me with the means to sustain, I would no longer need the return of the birds. Thank you.